The message arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning at the Planetary Defense Command Center beneath Mount Cheyenne. Admiral Sarah Chen stared at the quantum-encrypted transmission, her coffee growing cold beside her terminal. After decades of searching the stars for signs of intelligent life, first contact had finally arrived. But not in the way anyone had expected. "This can't be right," she muttered, running the decryption sequence again. The message remained unchanged. "Your quarantine has ended. The Galactic Council awaits your response." Within hours, the orbital defense grid detected multiple vessels emerging from fold space at the edge of the solar system. Their energy signatures dwarfed anything humanity had ever achieved. The ships moved with impossible precision, forming a perfect hexagonal pattern around Earth's orbital plane. The Council's ambassador, a towering figure with iridescent scales and multifaceted eyes, materialized directly inside the United Earth Government's chamber in Geneva. The security systems hadn't even registered the teleportation event. "We apologize for the necessary deception," it said, its words somehow appearing directly in the minds of everyone present. "The quarantine was for your own protection." President Carmen Rodriguez kept her composure, though her knuckles whitened as she gripped the podium. "Quarantine. You've been deliberately isolating humanity. For 3,000 of your years," the ambassador confirmed. "It was deemed necessary after the precursor incident. Surely you understand. Young species must be managed until they prove themselves capable of joining galactic civilization." The implication sent shockwaves through the assembled human leadership. Every unexplained phenomenon, every UFO sighting, every mysterious disappearance, they had all been part of an orchestrated program to keep humanity contained. Their development had been carefully monitored and controlled. But the Council had made a critical mistake. They had underestimated humanity's drive to understand the unknown, to push beyond their limitations. In secret bunkers and hidden facilities across the globe, humans had been preparing for this moment, not because they knew it would come, but because they refused to accept the possibility that they were alone in the universe. Admiral Chen's hands trembled as she sent the encrypted signal to Project Prometheus. Decades of reverse engineering crashed alien vessels, of quantum computing breakthroughs, of advances in theoretical physics. All of it had happened despite the Council's quarantine. Perhaps even because of it. The ambassador's next words confirmed their worst fears. "Now that you have achieved quantum communication capability, you are eligible for probationary membership in the Council. Under our guidance, of course. Your species has shown remarkable potential, despite some concerning tendencies toward aggression and unpredictability." President Rodriguez shared a knowing look with Admiral Chen before responding. "And if we decline this generous offer?" The ambassador's scales shifted color, displaying patterns that seemed to indicate amusement, or perhaps contempt. "Decline? My dear human, you misunderstand. This is not an invitation. It is a notification. Your species will be integrated into the Council's hierarchy at an appropriate level. Resistance would be unfortunate." What the Council couldn't know, was that humanity had been watching them back. Every time they had sent their stealth ships to observe Earth, human quantum sensors had been gathering data. Every crashed vessel they thought they had successfully eliminated had instead been recovered and studied. The quarantine meant to contain humanity had instead created a pressure cooker of innovation and determination. Admiral Chen sent the second signal. Across the solar system, hidden facilities powered up. Deep within the asteroid belt, beneath the surface of Mars, and in the shadows of Jupiter's moons, humanity's secret fleet waited. They had built it not because they knew aliens existed, but because they refused to be caught unprepared if they did. "Perhaps," President Rodriguez said carefully, "we should discuss the terms of this integration more thoroughly. We wouldn't want any unfortunate misunderstandings." The ambassador's scales rippled again. "Your species' diplomatic skills are admirable, but ultimately irrelevant. The Council's decision is final. We will begin the integration process immediately." As if to emphasize the point, more Council ships began emerging from fold space. Their weapons remained powered down. They clearly didn't expect any meaningful resistance from a supposedly primitive species. That was their second mistake. Admiral Chen's third signal activated Project Oracle, a quantum AI that humanity had developed by studying the fragments of alien technology they'd recovered. In microseconds, it analyzed the Council ship's energy signatures, calculated their weapons capabilities, and updated the battle plans it had been refining for decades. "Mr. Ambassador," President Rodriguez said, her voice taking on an edge of steel, "I'm afraid there's something you should know about humans. We don't respond well to ultimatums." The ambassador's dismissive response was cut short by urgent communications from the Council fleet. Human ships were appearing seemingly out of nowhere, emerging from dimensional pockets that should have been impossible for such a young species to create. They had weapons that shouldn't exist, defenses that shouldn't be possible, and most importantly, they had numbers that the Council hadn't expected. "Impossible," the ambassador whispered, its scales turning pale. "You were quarantined, contained. How did you?" "We adapted," President Rodriguez stated simply. "That's what humans do. We observe, we learn, we prepare. And now, Ambassador, we would like to propose our own terms for joining the Galactic Council." As the hidden human fleet moved into defensive positions around Earth, the balance of power shifted. The Council had expected to find a primitive species ready for harvesting into their hierarchy. Instead, they found themselves facing an emerging power that had turned their own quarantine into an advantage. The first contact that should have been humanity's submission to galactic authority had become something else entirely, the beginning of a negotiation between equals. And as Admiral Chen watched the Council ships adjust their positions from defensive to diplomatic formations, she allowed herself a small smile. Humanity's long isolation was over, but not on the Council's terms. They had prepared for this moment not because they knew it would come, but because that's what humans did. They imagined possibilities, prepared for them, and turned obstacles into advantages. The Council was about to learn just how dangerous it had been to leave humanity alone to develop in their own unique way. The Council's diplomatic vessel hung in high Earth orbit like a suspended diamond, its crystalline structure refracting sunlight in impossible patterns. Inside, Admiral Chen stood before the assembled alien representatives, her dress uniform pristine, her expression carefully neutral. The holographic display behind her showed only a basic schematic of Earth's defensive capabilities, exactly what the Council would expect from a newly discovered civilization. Supreme Counselor Vaxthal, a being of pure energy contained within an ornic mechanical shell, spoke first. "Your species' resistance is admirable but futile. Our records show your technological level. You have barely mastered fusion power. Your fastest ships cannot exceed 10% of light speed. Your weapons are primarily chemical and nuclear-based." "Your records," Shen replied calmly, "are incomplete." With a subtle gesture, she activated her neural implant, technology that the Council believed humanity was centuries away from developing. The holographic display shifted, showing the true extent of Earth's hidden fleet. Vessels emerged from dimensional pockets throughout the solar system, their designs unlike anything in the Council's database. The Council chamber erupted in chaos. Species that communicated through color patterns flashed in alarm. Those that used pheromones filled the air with the scent of fear and confusion. The crystalline beings vibrated at frequencies that threatened to shatter nearby objects. Impossible. Vaxthal's mechanical shell actually took a step backward. These ships, their configurations violate at least 7 different laws of physics according to your civilization's current understanding. "Current public understanding," Chen corrected. She nodded to her aide, who activated the second phase of the presentation. "Every time you sent ships to observe us, we were observing you. Every crashed vessel you thought you'd destroyed, we recovered them, studied them, improved upon them." The holographic display showed the evolution of human military technology over the past 50 years. how they had taken the quantum field manipulators from a crashed Council scout ship and miniaturized them, how they had reverse-engineered gravity control systems and combined them with human innovations in materials science to create ships that could turn faster, accelerate harder, and withstand more stress than anything the Council had developed. But the quarantine, another counselor protested. Our energy barriers prevented any significant technological transmission. Chen allowed herself a small smile. You contained our ships, yes, limited our physical expansion. But you never managed to quarantine human imagination. Every science fiction story, every wild theory, every dream of the stars, they all contributed to our development. When we found alien technology, we already had thousands of theoretical frameworks for how it might work. The display shifted again, showing the heart of humanity's hidden fleet. The Prometheus-class dreadnoughts, vessels that combined Council technology with human ingenuity in ways their creators had never envisioned. Their hulls were made of self-repairing metamaterials. Their weapons systems used principles of quantum entanglement to bypass traditional defenses. Their engines bent space itself in ways that the Council's scientists had deemed too unstable to be practical. Reckless, Vaxthal declared, but there was a new emotion in their energy patterns, respect tinged with fear. Your species has taken technologies you barely understand and pushed them far beyond safe operational parameters. Safe, Chen repeated the word thoughtfully. Safety is important, yes. But humanity has always believed that some risks are worth taking. We didn't develop these technologies because we knew they would work. We developed them because we refused to accept that they couldn't work. She gestured to the display again, showing the true numbers of Earth's fleet. Thousands of ships, hidden in dimensional pockets or disguised as asteroids. Defensive installations that could redirect the energy of an attacking vessel back upon itself. Swarms of autonomous drones that used quantum entanglement to coordinate their actions faster than light itself could travel. Your quarantine forced us to look inward, to develop in isolation, Chen continued. But isolation breeds innovation. When you can't ask for help, you learn to solve problems in new ways. When you can't access established technologies, you create your own. The Council chamber had grown silent. The various representatives were communicating among themselves on encrypted channels, but their body language, varied as it was across species, showed their growing realization. They had intended to find a primitive civilization ready for absorption into their hierarchy. Instead, they had found a species that had turned their own restrictions into advantages. We don't want conflict, Chen assured them. Humanity has always dreamed of peaceful contact with other civilizations. But we will not be relegated to a subordinate role. We will not surrender the innovations we've developed. And we will not allow our future development to be constrained by external mandates. Vaxthal's energy form pulsed thoughtfully. You understand that unrestricted technological development poses risks to the entire galaxy. That there are reasons why certain advances are carefully controlled. We do, Chen nodded. And we're willing to discuss reasonable safety protocols, but they must be discussed and agreed upon as equals. The time for unilateral decisions about Earth's future is over. The Council representatives conferred again, their various forms of communication creating the symphony of light, sound, and energy that the human observer's implants struggled to translate. Finally, Vaxthal spoke again. Perhaps we have been too rigid in our thinking. Your species has demonstrated not just technological capability, but innovation in ways we had not thought possible. This requires consideration. Chen allowed herself another small smile. It wasn't acceptance, not yet, but it was acknowledgement. The Council was beginning to understand that humanity wouldn't simply accept the role they had planned for Earth. The hidden fleet had served its purpose, not as a weapon, but as a demonstration. As she prepared to begin the actual negotiations, Chen reflected on the irony. The Council had quarantined humanity to prevent them from developing too quickly, from becoming a potential threat. Instead, they had created exactly what they had feared, But perhaps, just perhaps, they had also created something they desperately needed. A species that could think differently, that could see new solutions to old problems. The real challenge was just beginning. Convincing the Council that humanity's unconventional approaches were an asset rather than a threat would require all the diplomatic skill they could muster. But as Chen looked at the holographic display of Earth's hidden fleet, a testament to human determination and creativity, she knew they had taken the first crucial step. The Council had wanted to guide humanity's development. Instead, they would have to adapt to it. The Council's response came 3 days after the revelation of Earth's hidden fleet. Their ships appeared in massive numbers, forming a spherical blockade around the entire solar system. Energy fields rippled between the vessels, creating a containment net that made traditional fold space travel impossible. Their message was clear. If humanity wouldn't accept guidance, they would be forced back into isolation. Aboard the flagship Prometheus, Admiral Chen watched the tactical display with her command staff. The Council's blockade vessels numbered in the thousands, each one a masterpiece of proven technology refined over millennia. They had positioned themselves in a mathematically perfect formation, using overlapping fields to create an impenetrable barrier. They're not even trying to hide their capabilities now, Commander Jackson noted, his cybernetic eye scanning the sensor data. Those are realm-class battleships. The Council usually reserves those for containing rebellions by advanced civilizations. They're trying to intimidate us, Chen replied, studying the formation. Show us what we're up against if we don't fall in line. Traditional tactics would give us a 0% chance of breaking that blockade. Good thing we don't rely on traditional tactics, Jackson smiled. Chen nodded to her tactical officer. Initiate Operation Lockpick. Throughout the solar system, humanity's hidden fleet began to move, but not toward the blockade. Away from it. Council observers watched in confusion as Earth's ships retreated to seemingly random positions throughout the system. Some powered down completely, becoming little more than stellar debris on sensors. The Council's command channel crackled to life. This is Supreme Counselor Vaxthal. Your attempts to resist are futile. The containment field will hold for centuries if necessary. Return to your designated development phase, and we will show leniency. Chen didn't respond. Instead, she gave the signal to activate humanity's newest innovation, something they had developed not by copying Council technology, but by thinking about space in a fundamentally different way. Deep within the Prometheus, the quantum resonance engine powered up. It didn't try to breach the Council's containment field or overcome it with brute force. Instead, it began to sing. Gravitational waves rippled out from the human fleet, precisely calibrated to harmonize with the natural frequency of space itself. Each ship contributed to the symphony, their gravitational pulses building upon each other in ways that seemed random but were anything but. On the Council ships, alarms began to blare. Their containment field wasn't being attacked. It was being played like an instrument. The gravitational resonance created patterns in space-time that the field couldn't adapt to because it wasn't programmed to recognize music as a weapon. Impossible. Vaxthal's voice held genuine astonishment. You're using gravity waves to create harmony. Humans have always been good at finding rhythm in chaos. Chen finally responded. Your containment field is perfect at stopping brute force attempts to breach it, but it was never designed to handle symphonic warfare. The gravitational resonance reached its crescendo. Throughout the blockade, ships began to lose position as space itself seemed to dance to humanity's tune. The mathematically perfect formation began to show cracks, literal ripples in space-time where the containment field weakened. You're destabilizing the entire sector, Vaxthal warned. This level of gravitational manipulation could tear space itself apart. Only if we push it too far, Chen assured them. We've spent years testing these harmonics. We know exactly where the breaking point is and how to stay just beneath it. As if to demonstrate, the human fleet began a new movement in their gravitational symphony. The ripples in space-time stabilized, creating stable corridors through the Council's blockade. It wasn't a violent breach. It was more like convincing space itself to politely step aside. Second phase, Chen ordered. The human ships that had powered down suddenly surged to life, but they didn't move through normal space. Instead, they used the gravitational corridors created by their fleet's symphony, sliding through the gaps in the Council's perfect formation like water flowing through cracks in a dam. "This is your final warning." Vaxthal's voice had lost its commanding tone. "Stand down or what?" Chen interrupted. "You'll tighten the containment field. We're not fighting against it. We're dancing with it. You can't stop a dance by building a stronger wall." To demonstrate her point, more human ships began moving through the blockade, each one adding its own notes to the gravitational symphony. The Council's mighty containment field remained intact, but it had become irrelevant. Humanity hadn't broken it. They had simply found a way to work with it, to turn its rigid structure into an advantage. "Your species," Vaxthal said slowly, "continues to demonstrate disturbing levels of innovation." "Not disturbing," Chen corrected. "Different. We look at problems differently because we had to. Your quarantine forced us to find new ways to understand space and time. Ways that even your advanced civilization never considered because you were too focused on perfecting existing techniques." The tactical display showed human ships now freely moving through the blockade, their gravitational symphony maintaining stable corridors through the Council's containment field. They hadn't defeated the Council's superior technology. They had simply rendered it irrelevant through lateral thinking. "We're not trying to fight you," Chen continued. "We're trying to show you that there are other ways to approach problems. Your civilization has achieved amazing things through careful, methodical advancement. But humanity's gift is finding unexpected connections, seeing patterns where others see only chaos." She watched as the last of Earth's combat fleet took up positions outside the blockade. They hadn't fired a single shot, hadn't destroyed a single Council vessel. Instead, they had demonstrated something far more powerful: the ability to think in ways that tens of thousands of years of established doctrine couldn't predict or counter. "The choice is yours," Chen said to the silent Council command channel. "You can maintain this blockade, waste resources trying to contain a species that has already proven containment is pointless, or you can accept that humanity has something valuable to offer the galactic community, not as subordinates to be guided, but as partners who see the universe in a different way." The response took longer than she expected. When it came, she could hear the resignation in Vaxthal's voice, but also a note of curiosity that hadn't been there before. "Perhaps," the Supreme Counselor said carefully, "it is time to discuss a different form of relationship between humanity and the Council." In the depths of the Council's archive ship, Admiral Chen stood before a holocron that contained millions of years of galactic history. The massive vessel, shaped like an infinite spiral, housed the accumulated knowledge of over 10,000 civilizations. After the gravitational symphony had demonstrated humanity's unique capabilities, the Council had finally granted them access to their true history. Supreme Counselor Vaxthal's energy form flickered with unusual patterns as the holocron activated. "What we're about to show you has been sealed for 3,000 years. The truth about why Earth was quarantined." The holocron projected a scene from ancient history, a devastating war that had nearly torn the galaxy apart. The precursor incident, as the Council called it. But it wasn't what Chen had expected. Instead of battles and destruction, she saw laboratories and research centers. "I don't understand," she admitted. "Where's the war?" "The war came later," Vaxthal explained. "This is where it began, with a discovery about certain species' cognitive patterns." The holocron zoomed in on brain scans of various alien species. Most showed similar patterns, structured, orderly neural pathways that processed information in predictable ways. But then it showed a scan that was radically different, with neural pathways that seemed to dance and shift, forming new connections in seemingly random but ultimately purposeful ways. "Human brains," Chen whispered, recognizing the patterns from Earth's own neurological research. Not just humans, Vaxthal corrected. These scans are from the precursors, the species that nearly destroyed galactic civilization through unrestricted innovation. The scene shifted, showing how the precursors had advanced at an astronomical rate, developing technologies that defied conventional understanding. They didn't follow the normal pattern of careful, methodical advancement. Instead, they made intuitive leaps, saw connections that other species missed, and developed technologies that seemed to violate the fundamental laws of physics. Their pattern of thought was unlike anything we had encountered, Vaxthal continued. They could look at established principles and see not just what was, but what could be. They didn't just solve problems, they redefined them. Like using gravitational harmonics to bypass a containment field, Chen said quietly, understanding dawning. Exactly. When we first discovered Earth, we were shocked to find another species with the same cognitive patterns as the precursors. The same ability to make intuitive leaps, to see possibilities where others saw only limitations. The holocron showed the end of the precursor civilization, not through warfare, as Chen had assumed, but through their own innovations. They had advanced so quickly, pushed the boundaries of physics so far, that they had lost control. Their final experiment had torn a hole in reality itself, consuming their entire civilization in an instant. The quarantine wasn't about containing humanity's technological development, Chen realized. It was about containing our way of thinking. You were afraid we'd make the same mistakes as the precursors. We were afraid you would make worse mistakes, Vaxthal corrected. The precursors at least had access to the Council's accumulated wisdom. They chose to ignore it, but they had it. We thought that by isolating humanity, by forcing you to develop more slowly, we could prevent another catastrophe. The irony wasn't lost on Chen. Instead, you forced us to develop in secret, to push boundaries without guidance, to take risks because we had no one to tell us what was impossible. The holocron shifted again, showing current scans of human neural activity alongside ancient precursor scans. They were similar, but not identical. Where the precursor patterns showed chaos barely contained, human patterns showed chaos organized into complex but stable structures. This is what we didn't expect, Vaxthal admitted. Your isolation led you to develop something the precursors never did, the ability to balance innovation with stability. Your gravitational symphony proved it. You pushed the boundaries of physics, yes, but you also knew exactly where to stop. You found harmony where the precursors only found power. Chen studied the neural patterns thoughtfully. Because we had to. We developed in an environment where one mistake could mean extinction. We couldn't afford the precursors' reckless advancement. Precisely. And that is why we are here now, showing you this truth. The Council has realized that our attempt to prevent a repeat of the precursor incident may have inadvertently created something far more valuable, a species that combines precursor creativity with sustainable development. The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't just survived the quarantine. They had evolved because of it. Their isolation had forced them to develop safeguards and limitations that the precursors had never considered necessary. There's more, Vaxthal said, the energy patterns of their form showing what Chen had learned to recognize as concern. We didn't bring you here just to explain the past. We need your help with the present. The holocron's display changed one final time, showing a region of space far from Earth. At first, it looked like a normal star field, but then Chen noticed the pattern, or rather, the lack of one. An area where the stars seemed to dance and shift, defying the laws of physics in ways that even humanity's gravitational symphony couldn't explain. The precursors' final experiment didn't just destroy their civilization, Vaxthal explained. It created a wound in space-time that has been growing for millennia. Our traditional approaches have failed to contain it. We need a species that can think differently, that can see patterns in chaos and find harmony in discord. You need humans, Chen said, finally understanding the full scope of what the Council was asking. We need humans, Vaxthal confirmed. Not as subordinates to be controlled, but as partners who can see solutions we cannot. The quarantine is over not just because you proved yourselves ready, but because the galaxy cannot afford to waste your potential any longer. Chen stared at the anomaly in the holocron's display, her mind already beginning to see patterns in its chaos. The human fleet's gravitational symphony had been just the beginning. Now they faced a challenge that would require all of humanity's unique abilities, and perhaps help them prove once and for all that they could succeed where the precursors had failed. "When do we start?" she asked. The energy patterns in Vaxdal's form shifted to something that might have been relief or hope. Immediately. There's no time to waste. The anomaly grows larger every day, and we have much to teach each other if we're going to face it together. At the edge of known space, where reality itself grew thin, the combined fleets of humanity and the Council faced the legacy of the precursors. The anomaly pulsed with impossible colors, its boundaries shifting and writhing as it consumed the very fabric of space-time. Traditional sensors couldn't even track its expansion. They could only measure the growing void where natural laws ceased to function. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, but she wasn't alone. Around her, holographic representatives from both human command and the Council formed a united strategic circle. The meeting that would determine the fate of the galaxy had begun. "Our latest containment field failed," reported Vaxdal, their energy form dimmed with exhaustion. The anomaly simply ignored it, as if our most advanced technology was nothing more than a child's drawing in space. "Because we're trying to fight chaos with order," Chen said, watching the swirling patterns of the anomaly. "Look at how it moves. It's not random destruction. It's a pattern we don't understand yet." She gestured, and the Prometheus's quantum AI generated a new display, showing not just the anomaly's current state, but its behavior over time. Sped up, its movements began to look familiar. "It's like a dance," observed Dr. Sarah Hamilton, Earth's leading quantum physicist. "Similar to the gravitational harmonics we used to break the blockade, but on a scale we've never imagined." "The precursor's final experiment," Chen mused. "They weren't trying to destroy anything. They were trying to change the fundamental nature of reality itself, to make the universe dance to their tune. And they lost control," Vaxdal added grimly. "Created a cascade effect that's been growing ever since." Chen's expression changed as a new pattern emerged in her mind. What if we're not supposed to contain it? What if we need to complete it? The Council representatives reacted with alarm. Complete it? The experiment that destroyed an entire civilization. Not complete it their way, Chen clarified. The precursors tried to force reality to change, but we've learned something they never did: how to work with natural forces instead of against them. She turned to Dr. Hamilton. Could we modify our gravitational symphony? Not to fight the anomaly, but to harmonize with it. The physicist's eyes lit up with understanding, like adding new instruments to an orchestra that's playing out of tune. If we could match its frequency, then gradually shift it. You're suggesting we try to stabilize an escalating reality breach by adding more energy to it. Vaxdal's form flickered with disbelief. The risks are less than the risk of doing nothing, Chen interrupted. The anomaly is growing exponentially. In less than a year, it will reach the nearest populated system. In 5 years, it will threaten the core worlds. We're out of safe options. The human fleet was already moving into position, arranging themselves in a pattern that mirrored the anomaly's swirling structure. The Council ships, after a moment's hesitation, began to follow their lead. All ships, prepare for gravitational symphony, Chen ordered. But this time, we're not looking for weakness or trying to create change. We're looking for harmony. The quantum resonance engines powered up across both fleets, but instead of the precise, controlled frequencies they had used to break the blockade, they began to emit patterns that seemed almost chaotic, until you realize they were matching the anomaly's own dance. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then, slowly, the edges of the reality breach began to pulse in time with the fleet's emissions. The impossible colors started to shift, becoming something almost comprehensible. "It's working," Dr. Hamilton reported, her voice tight with concentration. "The anomaly is responding to our resonance, but we need more power, more ships to complete the pattern." Vaxthal's energy form pulsed once, decisively. "All Council vessels, divert power to your resonance generators. Follow the humans' lead." The symphony grew stronger. Where the precursors had tried to force reality to change, humanity led an effort to convince it to stabilize. The fleet's gravitational emissions weren't fighting the anomaly. They were providing it with a framework, a way to express itself without destroying the fabric of space-time. Hours passed, then days. Ships had to rotate out as their crews reached exhaustion, but the symphony continued. Slowly, the reality breach began to change. The chaotic energy started to flow in more predictable patterns. The impossible colors settled into something that, while still strange, no longer hurt to look at. "Final phase," Chen announced, her voice hoarse from days of coordinating the effort. "All ships, prepare for harmonic convergence." The combined fleet's formation tightened, their gravitational emissions reaching a crescendo. The anomaly pulsed one final time. And then, like a note finding its proper place in a chord, it settled. The reality breach didn't close, but it stabilized, its boundaries becoming fixed and predictable. "Remarkable," Vaxthal observed, studying the readings. "You didn't try to destroy it or contain it. You taught it how to exist without causing harm." "That's the difference between humanity and the precursors," Chen said quietly. "They wanted to master the universe. We just want to understand it, and maybe help it find a better way to be." The stabilized anomaly became a monument of sorts, a reminder of both the precursor's ambition and humanity's approach to solving seemingly impossible problems. Research stations were established to study it, staffed by joint teams of human and council scientists. What had once been a threat to the galaxy became a source of new discoveries about the nature of reality itself. In the years that followed, humanity's role in the galactic community evolved. They were not the most powerful civilization, nor the most technologically advanced, but they became known as the species that could see connections others missed, that could find solutions in unexpected places. The Council changed too. The rigid hierarchy that had governed the galaxy for millennia gave way to a more flexible structure, one that valued innovation and different perspectives alongside stability and tradition. The quarantine that had been meant to contain humanity had instead led to the evolution of both species. "You know," Chen said to Vaxthal, as they watched another research team depart for the stabilized anomaly, "in a way, the Council's original plan worked. You wanted to prevent us from making the same mistakes as the precursors." "Though not in the way we intended," Vaxthal admitted. "We thought isolation would slow your development. Instead, it taught you something far more valuable, the wisdom to know when to push boundaries and when to seek harmony." "And now?" Chen asked. "Now," Vaxthal's energy form brightened, "we face the future together. There are more anomalies out there, more challenges that require both human creativity and council wisdom. The galaxy is vast, and we have much to learn from each other." The stabilized reality breach shimmered in space, no longer a wound in the universe, but a window to new possibilities. Humanity had found their place among the stars not through conquest or submission, but by being true to their nature, seeing patterns in chaos, finding harmony in discord, and never stopping until they understood the dance of the universe itself.